don't think I got the chance to introduce myself earlier. My name is Paulo Garcia. I work for the Scripps Research graduate program in Jupiter, Florida, but I also help recruit for many of our different programs, both in Jupiter and in La Jolla, California. So today for our panel, we have a mix of former and current participants in some of our programs. We have Dalila, who's a current prep participant at UF Scripps. We have Allison, who is a former SURF intern at UF Scripps. And we also have Reilly, who's a current first-year PhD student at Scripps Research, but also a former SURF participant. So we can go ahead, and the first question would be just to let us know, where did you do your undergraduate program, and which lab did you participate during your internship program, and what kind of research did you work on? And I guess we can start with Allison, and then we can do Dalila and then Reilly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison, and I participated last summer in the SURF internship program in Jupiter, Florida. And I was working with Dr. Laura Bond on a project studying signaling of mu-opioid receptors. Oh, and I'm currently a senior at the University of Florida.
Hi, I'm Dalila, and I'm right now in the prep program. So that's for recent graduates getting their bachelor's. And right now I'm in a new lab, the Seth lab, Dr. Seth. And right now we're just working on a protein called P53. So it comes up a lot in different types of cancer. So main goal is just trying to understand gain of function activities that happens from that, and then just kind of go from there.
Hi, everyone. Like Paulo said, my name is Reilly. I did my undergrad at a small school called College, Minnesota, and I graduated just in May. I was in the SURF program in the summer of 2021 on the California campus with Dr. Stuart Lipton in molecular medicine. And I was studying a protein called PPT1 and just trying to characterize its function and find out how.
Thank you, Reilly. And so the first question is a common one that we received from the participants is, what does a typical day look like in your respective internship program?
Yeah, so as a SURF intern, all of the interns kind of live together in the same building. So I would usually eat breakfast with some of my fellow interns and then head over to Scripps, and I would figure out whatever experiments I was going to be running that day, get my protocols together. And then by that point, my graduate student mentor probably would have arrived on campus. And then I would talk to him about my plan for the day, and he would either help me if I was doing a new experiment that I had never done before, or just kind of check my protocol and make sure I had everything set up correctly. And then I would do whatever experiment that was. One thing that was pretty consistent, I was growing cell lines, so I would take care of my cell culture. Yeah, and that was pretty much a typical day.
For me, I'd say it was more of like an experience on, or currently right now, it's more of like what your first year of grad school would be like, really. So since the lab I'm in is more chemical biology focused, it's kind of slow some days, and then other days it'll be like really busy all day. So it just kind of varies on where the project is going. Especially if, like, since we're working with cells, you have to either wait for them to grow and then treat them, you know, things like that. So it just would vary, I guess, for me.
Yeah, I think at least for me in the SURF program, it sounded a little bit similar to what Allison mentioned, but yeah, I worked pretty standard hours. I would say like a 9 to 5. Well, in terms of the actual science, my mentor was really good about kind of having a plan for each day. So especially in the first few weeks, I was working with research techs in the lab who were teaching me how to do these techniques and kind of getting comfortable with what I was doing. And then as I started to learn these techniques and kind of get more confidence, I was starting to just go in and do my experiments and leave when I was done. So by the end of the summer, I was pretty independent, which was really cool. And I think that's maybe a goal of one of these internships, And then I think also something I really enjoyed about the SURF program was after I would leave Scripps and just kind of hanging out with my roommates and the other interns. Like Allison said, you all live in the same area. So it's super easy to get together and have fun and hang out. So that was definitely some fun in the day-to-day as well, even if it was just like watching Bachelorette on Tuesdays together, things like that were definitely fun parts of the day-to-day.
And if you don't mind sharing, who participated as your in-lab mentor during the program, and how was that relationship like?
Yeah, so I had a graduate student mentor named Matt, and that's kind of more of like a friend type relationship, you know, like you're kind of on the same level as one another. So Matt was teaching me how to do all sorts of different experimental techniques. But you know, at the same time, my lab was really lighthearted, so we would joke around. Like, definitely, we had a lot of fun working together. And then my faculty mentor was Dr. Bond, who's just really great. Gave me a lot of advice in my career, with graduate school applications and different programs and stuff like that. So, really good relationships with both my faculty and graduate student mentors.
I guess in the lab, I sort of get help from everyone basically, but if I were to say I kind of had a mentor in the lab, it'd probably be the lab tech. And then of course my faculty mentor, but he does come in a lot. So I would say it's kind of equal in that sense. They both give attention to sort of helping or helping everyone else. So I think it's really different when I sort of ask other people when it comes to the mentorship aspect of things. Because for me, it's kind of like I'm able to get help from the mentor and then also help from, say, a lab tech or grad students in the lab. So it's kind of like everyone working together, helping.
Yeah, so for my experience, I feel that I got really lucky because my mentor in the program was a staff.
Thank you. And Reilly, I think we're experiencing some issues with your video. So if you want to disable the video, but you can keep the audio going that way, hopefully the audio doesn't get messed up. But we can go to the next question. Pertaining to what you guys just answered, what do you think was the most challenging part, when you started? And, I guess in looking back, what's the best way to sort of avoid that?
Yeah, so when I started the SURF internship program, I did have prior research experience, but I had only done computational work. I had never worked in a wet lab environment. So I think at the beginning, there's definitely a big learning curve as I'm learning how to hold a micropipette and do cell culture, and all of those skills, which can be, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it can be a lot at first. So I think the thing for me that was the most useful was to take really good notes. And I would ask everyone in the lab, my graduate student and lab techs, to send me protocols from their experiments. And then by being able to kind of read through those protocols, I felt a lot more prepared if I had access to that material, maybe the day before I was going to do an experiment, just so I kind of felt familiar with what I was going to do. And it's definitely just something that gets better with time. I mean, you're learning something new, you're in a completely new environment. So just practicing and getting better. And also, you're going to make mistakes when you're learning how to do something for the first time, and that's to be expected. So also learning from any mistakes or whatever happens in the lab.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Since I went to school for chemistry and then the lab that I'm in is more really biology focused. And I didn't do that much undergraduate research, and even though I did, it was more physical chemistry, so everything was like theoretical. It wasn't really working in a wet lab, but even though it was different, I think I really liked it. Or even right now still, it's only been, I think, like a couple months for me, since it's like a year-long program in my case, and I've already learned so much. So just in that amount of time, it's been able to learn so much, and then it'll definitely pay off later for grad school.
Yeah, I think I'll echo what has already been said, but I think one specific thing that was maybe a little bit challenging for me, especially coming from a really small undergrad institution, was imposter syndrome and feeling like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough to be here, or I don't know enough. But I think it's important to remember that that's the point of these internships, is to teach you, and you're going to work with really great scientists who are committed to teaching you these things and will help you grow as a scientist. And then I think just building confidence as you go is really huge and really important, and feeling good about what you're doing, the more you can do. And like Allison said, you're going to make mistakes, and it's going to take some time for you to get comfortable and confident. But once you do, it's a really great feeling. And I think you can kind of expect that. And so the imposter syndrome is something that it's hard to avoid, but just keeping in mind that, you know, you're meant to be there, and there are people who are going to help you succeed for sure.
To go off of that, and since, you know, all three of you attended very different universities or institutions, how would you describe the culture at Scripps, you know, Scripps Research in California or UF Scripps, in comparison to like a traditional university?
Yeah, so I go to a really big school. So compared to that, Scripps is really tiny, which is kind of nice. I think there's about like a little over 100 graduate students on the Jupiter campus of Scripps. So the interns are really like a force to be reckoned with on the campus. You definitely feel the presence of the interns. But at the same time, I feel like we really integrated within Scripps as a whole. I wasn't really expecting to be necessarily treated as a peer by like every single grad student on campus. But people will really make time to talk to you. I ended up being friends. You would hang out outside of the lab, not only with the fellow interns, but also with graduate students or maybe postdocs, which was extremely beneficial, you know, in terms of hearing about other research that's being done at Scripps and sort of shaping the path that you take as you're figuring out what types of research you're interested in. So I would say that Scripps overall, the environment is very small, but at the same time, extremely welcoming.
Yeah, definitely welcoming. Especially for me in the lab that I joined, it's new, you know, just starting up. And everyone that was sort of next door basically welcomed me and like said hello, you know, everything. And it was definitely very different from the university I went to back in California. So yeah, I mean, I've been liking it a lot. So yeah, very different.
Yeah, so I think at least at Scripps, I feel like there's a really strong research focus, especially because we aren't attached to an undergrad institution. It's just a graduate program. And I think there are a lot of benefits to that. And that's one of the reasons I chose Scripps for graduate school. But I also think like both before me have mentioned that Scripps is really welcoming, especially for interns. And you're going to meet people who are doing really incredible science. And I think the big thing here that I notice is that everyone is so passionate about what they do. And that might be true about other institutions, but I think it just really comes through when you meet and talk to people at Scripps. So I think the research focus and the quality of research being done here is really, really incredible.
Thank you. And I kind of want to go back to when you were looking at programs and applying for them. One of the questions coming from the students was, what is something crucial to keep in mind when writing a research/personal statement?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, especially with an undergraduate like internship, is really trying to emphasize your interest in that specific program and the research that's being done. So, you know, as an undergraduate, a lot of people probably don't have as much research experience. So I think being able to really, in your personal statement, identify specific faculty, you know, you can go through their websites, maybe read a paper, and just demonstrate that you have an understanding and also a curiosity about that specific subject matter that's being researched at that institution. And I think that really helps the reviewers see that you're someone who has an intellectual curiosity about science, and also start to picture you fitting into that program. So I definitely recommend in your personal statement mentioning specific professors who you would be interested in working with.
Yeah, I think that's kind of hitting all the points there. If you just are showing that like you're interested in it and you kind of want to do more with it, especially if you're reading like other professors' papers and kind of just putting yourself through that and showing that you want it, then I think that makes a big impact.
Yeah, I think kind of hit the nail on the head there, but I would say the biggest thing is demonstrating your curiosity in science and just wanting to know more about, whatever topic you're interested in. And even if you don't know exactly what that is, especially at Scripps, there's so much cool research going on that I'm sure you can find something that you'd be able to write about and talk about. And I guess I'd just say for me specifically coming from a smaller school, I found it really important to highlight why being given the opportunity to come to Scripps would be beneficial for me, just because the caliber of research here is not something I could have done at my undergrad institution. And so that was just one specific point that I think was really valuable for me to highlight, is that coming to Scripps would really give me a really great opportunity. And so talking about that in my personal statement, I think helped me get to Scripps.
We got another sort of advice questions from the students. What courses would you recommend undergraduates looking to apply to an internship program to take to prepare them?
I don't know if I would say that there's a specific class that I would recommend taking. I come from an engineering background, so it's pretty different than like curriculum wise than I think a lot of people at Scripps might have. I would say more so than a class, just maybe familiarizing yourself with reading publications is a little bit more helpful. I guess any class that teaches you laboratory techniques might be helpful, but I think also the way that it feels to be doing an experiment when you're in a lab class is a lot different than how it actually feels in a research lab. So I wouldn't really stress out if you feel like you don't have the classes that you think you might need, but rather, you're going to be learning the skills once you're there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess if people do want to take courses to sort of prepare, since I would say that Scripps has like a lot of aspects to it that are biology focused, I think what I've been sort of recommended is if you just want to sort of understand concepts that are being mentioned, because you'll probably be reading about it like in the papers that they give you, or if you need to work on a project and read again more papers about that. I think molecular biology is one that a lot of people have been recommending to me, even in the chemistry department. Even like I think an intro to that, to sort of just have like the basics if you did want to take a course, or even just like audit a course and just get yourself familiar with that. Like it doesn't have to be specifically for a grade, but just sort of get an understanding of the concepts that are going to probably commonly come up as you like talk about things in the labs.
Yeah, I think in terms of coursework, it really depends on what kind of lab you're in and what kind of research you're doing. For example, I hadn't taken a genetics course, and that was an area I was a little bit lacking when I was in the lab, but it didn't necessarily harm me because my mentors were really good about kind of just talking through some of those concepts, maybe in more detail than they would have had to if I had taken a genetics course. So I wouldn't say there's any like prerequisites that you have to have before doing research. But yeah, kind of like Allison said, any lab course that might teach you just general techniques could be valuable, but you're also going to learn a lot and learn that it's definitely a different setting in an actual research lab. So I think there are no real prereqs that you need to have before coming to SURF, I'd say.
Thank you. And what do you think is the one skill that you worked on or improved while participating in the internship program?
Ooh, it's hard to say just one. I mean, I think for me, that being my first experience in a wet lab, just like general like wet lab techniques, I find that now when I'm reading literature, it's a lot easier for me to actually picture the experiments that are going on when I'm reading the method sections of papers, because, you know, you've actually been in that environment and seen that. And I think a lot of that skill and that like deeper understanding doesn't just come from the actual work that you're doing in your lab. I think also talking to other interns and understanding like what their day-to-day experiments look like, and then the type of research and like questions that they're trying to answer has just really helped me generally connect things that I read in literature with actual experiments. I think presentation skills are also a really big one. You do a poster presentation at the end of the internship, and you're probably going to present your findings to your faculty mentor throughout the summer. So just being able to clearly communicate information, making graphics, analyzing data, all of that stuff, I think is really big too.
Yeah, I guess it would be hard to sort of say what one thing sort of improved, but I think mainly for me, it would be, I guess, technique with like everything. Even if it was something simple like pipetting or like cleaning up certain areas or knowing how to do certain things, like the motion of it, sort of to be more efficient, faster. I mean, like all those aspects, even like the very simple things. And there was one more thing. I don't know, I forgot.
Yeah, again, I think Allison and Dalila have done a great job of answering this, but yeah, the two things I was going to say were technique and presentation or communication skills. I also didn't have a super robust research experience before the SURF program. And so, yeah, just in general, gaining confidence working in a lab setting and working on the techniques that I was doing day in, day out and feeling confident in those was probably the biggest takeaway. And then also just generating confidence in myself as a researcher, I think was really big. And then, yeah, I did want to mention the communication aspect, which Allison kind of touched on, but I think that's a really big piece of doing science in general. And I also think through the Scripps programs, for me in SURF, that was something they definitely highlighted, is that you're going to have to make a poster. I presented to my lab at a lab meeting, so kind of put a PowerPoint together. But yeah, I think it's really, really huge to be able to talk about what you did, why you did it, and what the data show. And that is definitely something that I learned throughout the internship, and it's something I can say that I think I came away with from participating in SURF.
I was gonna say something about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess it's like I guess how to read papers, because there's like a specific way that you can actually approach them, and it kind of just makes it easier also. So even like say if you had to even present that paper and
well, we wait for her to connect back. We did want to give the opportunity to some of the current attendees to ask some questions. I see there are some in the Q&A, so if you guys don't mind answering some of these. These sort of tied back to sort of the application process. So what did you do to prepare for the SURF application process? For example, personal statement, recommendation letters, and the final interview.
So I guess, like I said, doing a lot of research into the program itself, and kind of like Scripps's program itself, and kind of trying to see where you fit in terms of any research experience that you may have, how that connects to research that's happening at Scripps, things that you're curious about, and how that connects to things that are happening at Scripps. And then I think in terms of preparing, I did go through an interview. So generally when I prepare for an interview with a scientist, I usually try and read up as much about the science that that person is doing, maybe look at some publications, and then just think about any of my strengths or experiences that I'm trying to emphasize in that conversation.
oh, what was the question?
Yes, I'll repeat it, and welcome back. Glad you were able to connect. This is more a question from the audience. How did you prepare for the application process? This was specific to SURF, where you can talk about your experience. how did you prepare to applying for the prep program? We'll let Reilly talk about the SURF.
Yeah, at least for me, I had a little bit of a different kind of experience with applying because my college had sort of an internal application first. But I think what really helped me is having a really good faculty mentor at my undergrad institution. And she also was my PI in the research lab I worked at in undergrad. So that was really helpful. And I was able to run questions by her and talk about my application. In terms of your personal statement, I would say get as many eyes on it as you can. I had my parents read it. I had my faculty mentor read it. I had fellow research teammates read it. Everybody gets a different perspective as they read through your statement. So that was really helpful for me. And then if your undergrad institution does have like a career center or something like that, I would take advantage of that. That is something that I did not do for the SURF application, but I did use the Career Center very heavily in my graduate school application, which was also to Scripps. And that feedback was super, super valuable. And I really wish I took advantage of it for other summer opportunities earlier in my college experience. So I would say if your college does have something like that with Career Center or anything along the lines of that, they can help you with interview prep, with writing personal statements. That was super, super huge for me. And I wish I would have done it earlier.
Yeah, I think actually that's what I did. So, and it helped a lot. So definitely take advantage of that if you're able to, or just get some type of feedback on everything, because it'll make a difference.
I think we're getting to the end time here, so I'll just have one final question that was from the Q&A. This is a little bit more introspective, but what do you think made you stand out as an applicant?
For me, I think, so I had been working on a computational project for the past, like for the year prior to applying to the SURF internship. And I was able to draw connections between the research experience that I had with the project that I was applying to work on at Scripps, and kind of present a clear motivation for why I wanted to be there and how I fit in. And I think for me, that's definitely probably the biggest thing that made me stand out.
I don't know. I guess what would have made me probably stand out to sort of get in the program. I did do a conference with the lab that I was with, even though it was for like a year and a half. So that probably would have been one of the things, because I joined the lab late, and even though I joined it late, I was able to sort of get on board with the project they were working on very quickly. And then even present it with them at it's called the ACS, the American Chemical Society conference. So that probably must have been something.
Yeah, I think I would say, I have my answer for what I think made me stand out, but I think just general advice in applying to programs like this is really just think about why you are applying and why you want to do the internship. And then I think inevitably you'll find something that you want to write about to draw upon. For me, the two things I really tried to emphasize in my application were coming from a smaller institution and why that kind of made me different or gave me a different way of thinking about science and thinking about research, because in my undergrad research, we didn't have a lot at our disposal. So I really kind of had to think outside the box. And so a lot of what I wrote in my personal statement was about that and how that helped me think about how to do science. And then the other thing I really tried to draw upon was my love for like science communication. I really like giving talks, giving presentations, communicating with people and networking. And so I also drew upon that because I think that's a super great quality to have in science. It's one that is going to be super important in writing grants, fellowship proposals, presenting your research at conferences, at lab meetings, whatever it is. Communication is really, really important. And so me drawing on that, I think also probably helped me stand out as an applicant.
Right. Well, I think we're just over our time, so I did want to thank you all for your time and participating. You all gave really great answers, your awesome advice to these prospective applicants. And to anybody still with us, we hope to see your application. Thank you very much and enjoy your weekend.